Father's Day fell on a warm Sunday afternoon, and my daughter decided to turn it into a spectacle I will never forget. She handed her father-in-law a luxury cruise package worth $13,000, purchased entirely with my money, and then slid a flimsy lottery ticket across the table to me. It cost $2. She laughed while doing it and said, half joking and half serious, "If you get lucky, Dad, remember that half of it belongs to me." I smiled on the outside, because that is what fathers like me do. But inside my chest, everything was burning. That little ticket eventually brought in $120 million, and by the time I was finished, she did not get half of anything. She received exactly what her actions earned. "Dad, this is your gift," my daughter said, her voice slicing through the forced cheer of the Father's Day dinner. "And if you win, do not forget, half of it is mine." Her name was Ashley now, no longer the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. She flicked the lottery ticket toward me across my dining table with that familiar smirk I had learned to dread. I caught the wrinkled slip of paper and slowly flattened it against the tablecloth with my rough, oil-stained fingers. $2. The printed numbers swam slightly as I stared at them, trying to understand the moment more than the gift itself. "That is very thoughtful," I said, carefully controlling my voice. "Truly." "Oh, but hold on," Ashley cut in before the sentence could finish. Her tone shifted into exaggerated excitement. "I have not given Richard his present yet." She reached behind her chair and pulled out a glossy gift box, the kind you only see in upscale boutiques. The ribbon alone looked like it cost more than my weekly food budget. It caught the light from my modest chandelier and shimmered as she lifted it. Richard straightened in his seat immediately. His tailored shirt looked freshly pressed, and the late afternoon sun pouring through my living room windows seemed to highlight everything about him that screamed comfort and money. My daughter's father-in-law carried himself like a man who had never had to count dollars at the grocery store. "These," Ashley announced proudly as she opened the box, revealing neatly arranged cruise tickets resting on silk, "cost $13,000. Richard deserves something special for everything he has done for our family." The lottery ticket in my hand suddenly felt weightless, almost embarrassing. I watched Richard inspect the tickets with obvious pleasure, his manicured fingers tracing the gold lettering along the edges. "Now this," he said with a satisfied nod, "is what a real gift looks like." Then his eyes lifted to meet mine across the table. "You raised her well." The words lingered in the air like thick smoke. Around us, the rest of the family grew uncomfortable. My sister, Linda, cleared her throat unnecessarily. My nephew, Brian, suddenly became deeply interested in his napkin. No one wanted to be part of this moment. "My father always taught me that actions matter more than words," Ashley replied brightly. She exchanged a look with Richard, something unspoken passing between them that made my stomach tighten. "Some people show love through meaningful gestures, others—" She gestured loosely in my direction, toward the lottery ticket. I kept my grip steady, even though my hands wanted to tremble. "I appreciate the thought, Ashley. I really do." "Oh, relax," she said with a dismissive wave. "It is just a joke, but seriously, if that ticket wins anything, I expect my share. I paid for it." Richard laughed quietly, clearly amused. "Maybe next year, Daniel will surprise us with something more impressive." Sunlight poured across the table, illuminating every strained expression. Linda froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Brian's wife, Emily, stared too intently at the framed family photos on my wall. Even my grandson, Noah, usually glued to his phone, looked up with a puzzled frown. "These cruise tickets," Richard continued, spreading them out like a magician showing cards, "mean 2 full weeks sailing through the Mediterranean. First-class suite, private balcony, all-inclusive dining, the kind of trip people remember for the rest of their lives." I nodded slowly, my throat tightening. "That sounds very nice." "It is more than nice," Ashley added quickly. "Richard has always supported us. He helped with the house, covered Noah's private school tuition, even pays for our country club fees. He deserves the very best." The thin paper in my hand felt like it might tear apart. My mind drifted to memories I never spoke about. Working double shifts at the auto repair shop, crawling under cars with aching knees, staying up past midnight rebuilding engines. I remembered 16-hour days just to afford Ashley's college tuition and textbooks, falling asleep in my chair because I was too exhausted to make it to bed. "Well," I said quietly, "I hope you enjoy every moment of it." "We certainly will," Richard replied, placing the tickets back into their box with deliberate care. This is what family looks like: generosity and respect. The conversation moved on as if nothing unusual had happened, but I stayed focused on that tiny square of paper between my fingers. $2. The same amount I used to hand Ashley for ice cream when she was a child, back when something so small could make her grin from ear to ear. After dinner, they left quickly. Doors slammed, engines started, and their voices faded down the street. I remained seated at the table, the lottery ticket still in my hand, watching the last streaks of sunlight vanish from my dining room. The house settled into silence, the familiar quiet of a man who lives alone. I looked around at the framed photos, the modest furniture I had collected slowly over decades, and the decorations I had put up for a Father's Day that had already passed. The lottery ticket ended up beside an empty coffee mug the next morning, resting in a shaft of pale light coming through my kitchen window. I sat at my laptop, staring at my bank statement, numbers blurring together as they always did. It was a habit I had kept for 40 years, first as a young father counting every dollar, and now as a cautious retiree, guarding the little I believed I still had. I slowly dragged my finger down the list of transactions on the screen. Power bill, groceries, the modest amount I had spent buying ingredients for the Father's Day meal. Everything looked ordinary, predictable, exactly as it should have been, until one entry made the coffee in my mouth turn bitter. Premium travel services, $13,630. I blinked hard, convinced I had read it incorrectly. The number did not change. I checked again, then leaned closer to the screen as if distance were the problem. My hands began to shake as I matched the date to my wall calendar. Thursday, 1 week earlier. I had not been anywhere near a travel agency. I had not booked a trip. I had barely left the house that day. The realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. Ashley still had authorized access to my bank account. I had set it up years ago, right after her mother passed away, just in case of emergencies. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten it was even there. My phone felt unusually heavy as I picked it up. I dialed her number with unsteady fingers. Each ring echoed through the quiet kitchen, mixing with the loud thud of my own heartbeat. "Hello, Dad," she answered. Her voice carried that familiar tone of distant politeness she used whenever I interrupted her carefully managed life. "Ashley," I said, forcing myself to stay calm, "I am looking at my bank statement." "So," she replied, "there is a charge for over $13,000 from premium travel services." There was a pause, and then she laughed. Light, casual, dismissive. "Oh, that," she said. "I bought Richard his cruise. He deserves something nice for once." Her words landed like a slap. "You took $13,000 out of my account without even asking me," I said. "I did not take anything," she shot back. "I used family money for a family gift." Her tone sharpened. "You were not going to spend it anyway. It was just sitting there." "Ashley," I said, my voice cracking despite my effort to hold it together. "That is theft. You stole from me." "It is not stealing when it is family money," she snapped. "Richard has always supported us financially. He helped when we needed it. This was just paying him back." I tightened my grip on the phone. "I am your father. I raised you. I worked double shifts to pay for your college. And Richard helped us move beyond all that," she interrupted. "He showed us what real success looks like, what generosity actually means, how people who matter live." She exhaled loudly, not bothering to hide her annoyance. "Instead of giving lottery tickets." The cruelty in her voice stunned me into silence. This was my daughter. The little girl who used to fall asleep against my chest while I read her stories. The teenager who collapsed into my arms when her mother died. The young woman who once called me her hero without hesitation. "Dad," she said, "are you still there?" "I am here," I whispered. "Look," she continued, "I know you are upset, but think logically. Richard earned that gift. He is successful. He contributes to our lives. He deserves acknowledgement." "And what about everything I have done?" I asked. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than I had ever heard it. "You did what fathers are supposed to do," she said flatly. "Richard went above and beyond." The line went dead. I stared at the phone as the hollow dial tone filled my kitchen, sounding eerily like a funeral bell. My hands trembled as I set it down. These same hands that had held her as a newborn, steadied her bike, clapped until they ached at her graduation. I walked to my nightstand and picked up the lottery ticket. The $2 joke she had tossed at me like an afterthought. Even that pathetic gift had been purchased with my own stolen money. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. Instead, I crushed the ticket in my fist and marched back into the kitchen. I tossed it into the trash. It hit the bottom with a dull thud, landing among coffee grounds and empty cans, the remnants of my quiet, apparently meaningless life. The house suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed closer, the air heavier. I needed to leave. I needed movement. I needed to escape the space where my daughter's betrayal echoed from every corner. I grabbed my jacket and stepped outside, letting my feet carry me through the familiar streets of my neighborhood. The morning air was crisp, filled with ordinary suburban sounds. Lawnmowers hummed. Children laughed. Neighbors called out greetings across low fences. Mrs. Patterson waved from her garden, her stiff hands carefully tending tomato plants. "Beautiful morning, Daniel," she called. "Yes, it is," I replied automatically, even though it felt like anything but. I passed the Reynolds house, where Mark was teaching his grandson how to throw a baseball. The boy's laughter floated through the air, light and uncomplicated. I remembered teaching Ashley the same way, her small hands gripping the ball, her face lighting up when she finally made a clean throw. When had that joy disappeared? When had my love become something inadequate, something embarrassing? The questions followed me down Oak Lane, past the corner market where I once bought her candy, past the park where she spent endless summer afternoons. Every memory felt stained now, warped by the woman she had become. My phone vibrated in my pocket. For a brief moment, hope stirred in my chest. Maybe she had reconsidered. Maybe she finally understood. I opened the message. "Dad, I talked to Richard about the money issue. He thinks you are overreacting. It is not like you needed it for anything important. We will pay you back when we can. Maybe by Christmas. A." I stopped walking. I read the message once, then again, then a third time, as if repetition might somehow soften it. When we can. As if $13,000 were spare change. As if my financial stability were optional. As if I should feel thankful for the vague promise of repayment months down the road. Before I could type a response, my phone rang. My sister Linda's name lit up the screen. "Daniel, are you all right?" she asked the moment I answered. "Ashley called me. She said you were upset about some money issue." "She stole $13,000 from my account," I said. My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. Flat, empty. She used it to buy her father-in-law a cruise. There was a long pause on the line. "She did what?" Linda finally said. "She still had access to my bank account," I continued. "She used it to buy Richard a $13,000 cruise for Father's Day. Then she handed me a $2 lottery ticket and joked that half the winnings would be hers." "Oh my God," Linda said softly. "Daniel, are you sure? Could there be some kind of mistake?" "She admitted it," I replied. "She said it was not stealing because it was family money." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "She said Richard deserved it because he has been generous to them. Apparently, that makes me disposable." Linda's voice softened, filled with a kind of sympathy that made my chest ache. "Daniel, I am so sorry. I had no idea she had become so, I do not even know what to call that." "Cruel," I said quietly. "She has become cruel." We talked for a few more minutes. Linda offered to come over, to confront Ashley herself, to help in any way she could. But there was nothing she could do. Nothing anyone could do. My daughter had shown me exactly where I stood in her life, and no amount of outside pressure could change that truth. I walked home slowly, my legs heavy with a kind of exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical effort. When I stepped inside, the house felt different, smaller, shabbier, as if it had been stripped of value simply because someone else had decided it was not worth much. The kitchen trash can still held the crumpled lottery ticket. I stared at it for a long moment, remembering the way Ashley had laughed as she slid it across the table, the careless cruelty of the gesture. Tomorrow, I would call the bank. I would revoke her access and undo the mistake I should have corrected years ago. But tonight, I sat alone in my quiet house and mourned the daughter I thought I had, the relationship that had quietly died without my noticing. The lottery ticket remained in the trash, forgotten, useless, while I grieved something far more valuable that was already gone. Morning came with the harsh clarity that follows a night without sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, untouched coffee cooling beside me, staring at the bank's customer service number written on a scrap of paper. For the first time in over a day, my hands felt steady. "First National Bank Customer Service, this is Rebecca," a woman said when I called. "How may I assist you?" "I need to revoke authorized access to my account," I told her. "Someone has been making purchases without my consent." The process was surprisingly straightforward. Rebecca spoke with calm professionalism, guiding me through each step. Within 15 minutes, Ashley's access was terminated, additional security measures were activated, and something unfamiliar settled into my chest. Control. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mr. Woods?" Rebecca asked. "No," I said. "That takes care of it. Thank you." After I hung up, I looked around my kitchen again. The space no longer felt shabby. It felt honest, clean, mine. My eyes drifted to the trash can, and I remembered the lottery ticket lying at the bottom, crushed among coffee grounds and scraps. The $2 joke that had sparked this entire mess, bought with my own stolen money and handed back to me like charity. I walked over and looked down at it. Even that hollow gesture had been funded without my permission. The irony was almost absurd. She had stolen from me to buy me a gift, then claimed half of what it might win. A sharp, decisive anger surged through me. I pulled the ticket out and smoothed it flat on the counter. The numbers stared back at me. 07, 14, 23, 35, 42 Powerball. 18. I memorized them without meaning to. Numbers that symbolized everything broken between my daughter and me. Then I crushed the paper again and threw it back into the trash harder than necessary. The morning stretched ahead, quiet and empty. I needed to move. I needed space. I needed to be anywhere other than this kitchen where yesterday's betrayal still clung to the walls. I put on my jacket and stepped outside, letting my feet guide me through the familiar streets of the neighborhood. The air was crisp, filled with the sounds of ordinary, honest life. Lawn mowers hummed to life. Children laughed. Neighbors called greetings across low fences. Mrs. Patterson was tending her garden again, her weathered hands carefully pruning her roses. She looked up as I passed and smiled warmly. "Morning, Daniel." "You are out early today," Mrs. Patterson said as I slowed near her fence. "I could not sleep," I replied, stopping to rest my hands on the top rail. "I figured a walk might clear my head." She nodded with quiet understanding. "Sometimes the best thinking happens when your feet are moving." My Harold always used to say that. Her late husband had been a good man, a mechanic like me, someone who worked with his hands, paid his bills, and treated people decently. The kind of man who understood that character mattered far more than the size of a bank account. "He was right," I said. I continued down the street. passing the Reynolds house where Mark was washing his car with his grandson beside him. The boy seemed far more interested in splashing water than cleaning anything, but Mark just laughed and let him enjoy it. Their laughter drifted through the air, simple and unburdened. 2 blocks later, I walked past the corner market where I used to buy Ashley candy when she was little. Mr. Chen was arranging fruit in the front window, carefully positioning each apple and orange as if it mattered. He had owned that store for 3 decades, never flashy, never wealthy, but always fair and steady. He had built his life on quiet dignity, not shortcuts. People like him understood something my daughter had forgotten. There was honor in honest work. There was value in treating others with respect. Life was not measured solely by what you could buy or display. My phone vibrated in my pocket. For a brief second, hope stirred. Maybe Ashley had reflected. Maybe she finally understood what she had done. I opened the message. "Dad, I talked to Richard about the money situation. He thinks you are overreacting. It is not like you needed it for anything important. We will pay you back when we can. Maybe by Christmas." A single letter followed. A. I stopped walking and read it again. The casual dismissal of my financial security. The assumption that $13,000 meant nothing to me. The vague promise of repayment at some undefined point in the future. It all settled into place with painful clarity. This was who she was now. This was what I represented to her. I deleted the message without replying and continued down the street. The neighborhood wrapped around me like something familiar and steady, filled with people living straightforward, honest lives. Whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms, with my dignity intact. Back at home, the crumpled lottery ticket sat forgotten in the kitchen trash, worthless and abandoned, while I moved forward with my head held high. 3 days passed after I secured my finances. 3 quiet days filled with morning coffee, simple meals, and the unexpected peace that comes from knowing you finally did the right thing. I was standing at the stove, stirring scrambled eggs in my old cast-iron skillet, when the phone shattered the silence with its sharp ring. I barely had time to answer before Ashley's voice burst through the receiver. "Dad, what the hell did you do to my card?" she demanded. "It was declined at Nordstrom. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" I set the spatula down slowly, my hand steady in a way it had not been days earlier. "I removed your access," I said calmly, "after you took $13,000 from my account." "I did not steal anything," she snapped, her voice jumping to that familiar pitch she used whenever she was cornered. "That money was for family, for someone who actually contributes to this family." "You did not ask," I replied. "You just took it." Through the phone, I could hear the rustle of shopping bags and the dull hum of a busy parking lot. She was calling me from outside whatever high-end store had just refused her. "I was standing there with an $800 handbag," she said sharply. $800. The clerk ran the card 3 times before telling me, in front of everyone, that it was declined. People were staring at me. I looked like some kind of common person who cannot afford her own purchases. The way she said common person made my chest tighten, as if financial restraint were some kind of personal failure. "I am sorry you were embarrassed," I said quietly, "but that does not change what you did." "What I did?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I treated Richard with the respect he deserves, something you have never understood." I carried the phone to the kitchen table and sat down in the same chair where I had discovered her theft just days earlier. "Ashley, I raised you," I said. "I worked 60-hour weeks to put you through college. I thought that meant something. And Richard helped us move beyond all of that," she shot back. "He showed us what real success looks like, not hoarding money like some kind of miser." The accusation hit hard. Decades of careful saving, buying generic groceries, driving used cars, choosing restraint so my family would be secure. And this was how she saw it. "You are going to regret this," she said, her voice dropping into something colder than I had ever heard from her. "You think you can humiliate me publicly and just walk away? You think there will not be consequences?" "I am not trying to hurt you," I said evenly. I am protecting myself. No, she replied, each word deliberate. You are being selfish, petty, cruel. Then, with a quiet certainty that sent a chill through me, she added, but I will not let you get away with it. I have friends, Dad, people who matter in this community, people who understand what family loyalty really means. The call ended with a sharp click that echoed through my quiet kitchen. I lowered the phone onto the counter and turned back to the stove, but the eggs were already cold, stiff in the pan. I reheated them anyway, out of habit more than hunger, but they tasted like ash. I pushed the plate away after a few bites. That evening, I tried to lose myself in television. I flipped channels without really seeing any of it. A nature documentary about wolves moving through snow-covered forests. A cooking show featuring elaborate desserts I would never attempt in my lifetime. A news segment analyzing economic policies that felt distant and irrelevant to my small, suddenly fragile world. My tablet rested on the coffee table, untouched since the day before. I had been deliberately avoiding social media, avoiding the urge to peer into Ashley's life from a distance. But curiosity has a way of wearing a man down. Eventually, I picked it up. I opened Facebook and scrolled past the usual collection of neighborhood updates and distant relatives' vacation photos. Then I saw it. Ashley's post sat right at the top of my feed. The photo showed her looking devastated, eyes red and glossy, tears carefully framed to appear raw and unfiltered. I knew her well enough to recognize the performance. The caption read, "Writing this breaks my heart, but I really need support right now. My father has decided to cut off my access to what has always been our family money. After years of standing by him, helping him through my mom's death, managing things when he could not, he suddenly decided I am not worthy of his trust. All because I bought Richard, who has been more of a real father figure to our family than anyone. A gift using money that was just sitting unused in an account. I never imagined my own father could be so selfish and cruel. I am honestly questioning everything I believed about the man who raised me." The post already had dozens of reactions. I counted 47 likes and 23 comments. I scrolled through them slowly, my stomach tightening with each one. "Oh my God, Ashley, I am so sorry. Older people can get so paranoid about money. Your father should be grateful to have such a caring daughter. Richard is an amazing man. He absolutely deserved that gift. Your dad is being ridiculous. Family money should benefit the whole family. Stay strong, sweetheart." I closed the tablet and sat in the dim living room, listening to the familiar creaks of the house settling around me. Somewhere nearby, in the kitchen trash can, lay the crumpled lottery ticket, the $2 joke, the careless insult that had exposed exactly what I meant to my daughter. The next evening found me in the same chair, the remote control loose in my hand as I mindlessly surfed through channels again. The fallout from Ashley's post had followed me all day. Neighbors who usually smiled now avoided eye contact. The cashier at the grocery store studied me with thinly veiled suspicion. Ashley's version of events was spreading, and I was losing control of my own reputation without ever saying a word. Click. A cooking show featuring complicated French pastries. Click. A rerun of a sitcom from the 1990s I had seen more times than I could count. Click. Local news discussing city budget problems. Click. "Good evening, Ohio," an announcer said brightly. "Welcome to tonight's Powerball drawing, where we have a rollover jackpot of $120 million. I almost changed the channel. Something about the announcer's cheerful tone made me pause. Maybe it was the absurd contrast. I was being painted as a greedy old man for protecting modest savings, while someone else was about to win more money than I could ever spend. "Tonight's winning numbers are..." The announcer's voice slowed, adopting that ceremonial cadence reserved for important moments. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42. And the Powerball is 18. My hand froze on the remote. Those numbers sounded familiar. Too familiar. I grabbed a pen from the coffee table and scribbled the numbers on the back of an envelope as the announcer repeated them. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42. Powerball 18. My heart began pounding before my mind fully caught up. I knew those numbers. I had seen them recently. I had stared at them long enough to memorize them in a moment of bitter anger. The lottery ticket. The crumpled piece of paper I had thrown away 3 days earlier. I staggered to the kitchen, my legs unsteady beneath me. The trash can sat beside the counter, unremarkable, filled with the remains of solitary living. Coffee grounds, empty cans, food scraps. I plunged my hands inside, digging past banana peels and soggy paper towels, searching desperately. Near the bottom, my fingers brushed something thin and stiff, stuck to the side of a yogurt container. I pulled it free. The lottery ticket. It was stained, wrinkled, speckled with coffee grounds, but intact enough to read. I carried it to the sink and gently rinsed away the grime, my hands trembling as I unfolded the paper. 7, 14, 23, 35, 42. Powerball 18. Every number matched. I collapsed into the kitchen chair, staring at the damaged ticket in stunned silence. The $2 joke Ashley had tossed at me like scraps. The gift she bought with my stolen money, then claimed partial ownership of. The piece of trash I had discarded in disgust. It was worth $120 million. I dialed the lottery hotline with fingers that would not stop shaking, carefully following the automated menu until I reached the number verification option. The recorded voice sounded calm and emotionless, as if it were not about to confirm something that would permanently alter my life. The winning Powerball numbers for tonight's drawing are 7, 14, 23, 35, 42, with Powerball 18. The jackpot amount is $120 million. I ended the call and stood there in my kitchen, slowly turning in place as if I were seeing it for the first time. The aging refrigerator hummed softly. The linoleum floor showed years of wear. The small table where I ate most of my meals alone sat exactly where it always had. Everything looked the same, yet none of it felt real anymore. It felt like a temporary set, something that could vanish at any moment. The lottery ticket rested on the table, still damp from being pulled out of the trash, creased sharply where I had crushed it in anger. Ashley's voice echoed in my head, clear as day. "If you win, remember, half is mine." Sleep barely touched me that night. I alternated between checking the numbers on the ticket again and lying flat on my back, staring at the ceiling while my thoughts raced. By morning, I had nearly convinced myself it was all a mistake, some stress-induced fantasy brought on by loneliness and exhaustion. But the numbers did not change. The ticket, despite everything it had been through, was real. The Ohio Lottery Commission building in downtown Columbus was far more imposing than I expected. Glass and steel rose toward a low ceiling of gray March clouds. Security guards stood watch near the entrance, and the entire place carried the quiet seriousness of people who dealt with life-altering sums of money every day. I held the ticket inside a clear plastic sleeve, my palms slick with sweat, despite the cool morning air. "Mr. Woods?" a woman called. She introduced herself as Janet Chen, her smile professional and measured as she examined my battered ticket. "This is quite a story," she said mildly. "You found it in your trash?" "I threw it away," I admitted. "I was angry. My daughter gave it to me for Father's Day, but the situation was complicated." Janet nodded without a trace of judgment and placed the ticket beneath a specialized scanner. "We see situations like this more often than you might think," she said. "What matters most is verification." After a moment, she looked up at me. "I am happy to tell you, Mr. Woods, that this is a valid winning ticket." The words seemed to echo through the sterile office. I gripped the arms of the chair, afraid my body might simply give out. "However," Janet continued calmly, "for a prize of this size, our verification process takes approximately 48 hours. We must complete multiple security checks, finalize legal documentation, and coordinate the payout process." I nodded, signing forms, presenting identification, and listening as she explained taxes, payout options, and publicity considerations. Most of it washed over me in a blur of numbers and legal language. By the time I walked back to my car, one truth stood out with absolute clarity. I was worth $120 million. The drive home felt unreal. Streets I had driven for decades seemed unfamiliar. The corner grocery store, Mrs. Patterson's rose garden, the elementary school where Ashley had learned to read. Everything looked the same, yet I felt like a visitor observing someone else's life. I had been home less than an hour when tires screeched into my driveway. Ashley burst through my front door without knocking, her face flushed, eyes bright with excitement and purpose. "Dad, I heard about the lottery," she blurted out. "Someone at my office knows a woman who knows someone at the commission. She saw your name on the winner list." I remained seated at the kitchen table, official paperwork spread neatly in front of me like evidence in a courtroom. "Hello, Ashley," I said evenly. "Do not hello me," she snapped, practically vibrating. "Do you understand what this means? We are millionaires, and you remember what I said. Half of it is mine." "That ticket was a gift," I replied, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "You cannot reclaim a gift." Her expression hardened instantly, the excitement draining away. "We had an agreement," she said sharply. "Everyone at that dinner heard me. Witnesses, Dad, legal witnesses." "You tossed that ticket at me like it was trash," I said quietly. "You bought it with money you took from my account without permission. This was never about sharing." "Stole?" Her voice shot upward. "I used family money for a family purpose, and now you are trying to cheat me out of what belongs to me." I studied her face, really looked at her, and felt something break inside me. The little girl who once curled up in my lap at bedtime was gone. In her place stood someone whose first reaction to my good fortune was calculating how much of it she could claim. "The ticket was a gift," I said again. "Whatever you intended, whatever you said, the moment you gave it to me, it became mine." "I will sue you," she shouted, slamming her hand onto the table hard enough to make the papers jump. "I will prove that ticket belongs to me. I will drag you into court and show everyone what kind of man you really are." I met her glare without flinching. "And what kind of man is that, Ashley?" She hesitated. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe even shame. Then it vanished, replaced by cold resolve. "The kind who steals from his own daughter." She hurled the words at me like a weapon, then turned and stormed out of the house just as dramatically as she had entered. I listened as her car engine roared to life, tires scraping against the driveway, the sound fading until there was nothing left but silence. I lowered my gaze to the paperwork spread across my kitchen table. Official documents, stamped forms, clear confirmation of a $120 million lottery win. More money than I could realistically spend in 10 lifetimes. And all I felt was exhausted. I woke the next morning to my phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. By the time I focused my eyes, there were 15 missed calls, 12 unread text messages, and a flood of social media notifications that made my stomach sink before I even unlocked the screen. The first Facebook post had gone up at 6:47 a.m., timed perfectly for people scrolling with their morning coffee. "Urgent. My father has stolen my lottery ticket and is trying to claim the entire jackpot for himself. This is the same man who cut off my access to family money and publicly humiliated me. The ticket was a gift to him, with the clear understanding that any winnings would be shared. This is elder abuse in reverse. When elderly people become so obsessed with money that they cheat their own children. Please share. People deserve to know the truth." Attached was a photo of me from last Christmas, wearing a holiday sweater, my expression serious and unsmiling. Below it, comments were already multiplying at a frightening pace, and Ashley was not finished. Her Instagram featured a tearful video filmed from inside her car. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as she stared directly into the camera. "I never wanted to air private family matters," she said shakily, "but I am desperate." My own father has literally stolen my lottery ticket and is now claiming the entire $120 million for himself. I bought that ticket as a Father's Day gift. I jokingly said half was mine, because that is what families do. We share. But apparently, my father heard that as a legal loophole instead of a daughter's love. Richard joined in with a campaign of his own, posting carefully worded statements on LinkedIn and Facebook, his professional tone lending the story an air of credibility. Witnessing financial elder abuse is heartbreaking, but reverse elder abuse is just as destructive. When elderly individuals become fixated on money to the point of betraying their children's trust and generosity, entire families suffer. My wife is devastated by her father's greed. The lottery ticket was purchased as a gift with clear verbal agreements about sharing, yet he now claims exclusive ownership. This kind of behavior tears apart families and communities. My phone rang again. "Linda." "Daniel, what on earth is happening?" she asked, her voice strained. "My neighbor just called asking if you really stole Ashley's lottery ticket. Social media is exploding." I explained everything as plainly as I could, but even to me it sounded tangled. "Yes, Ashley bought the ticket. Yes," she joked about sharing. "Yes, I had actually won." No, I did not believe I owed her anything. "But Daniel," Linda said gently, "she did buy it for you." "With money she took from my bank account without permission," I replied. By noon, the story had gone viral in our small corner of the internet. Local Facebook groups were flooded with arguments about family loyalty, legal rights, and moral obligations. The neighborhood app buzzed with heated posts about the greedy lottery winner on Oak Lane. I made the mistake of reading the comments. "This is disgusting. What kind of father does this to his own child? Lawyers need to get involved immediately. This is theft. I know this family. The daughter has always been kind and generous. The father has always been strange about money. Team Ashley. No way an old man should keep money that belongs to his daughter." Richard's professional circle mobilized quickly. Colleagues from his investment firm shared his posts with serious commentary about ethics and family values. People I had known for years publicly supported Ashley's version of events without hesitation. I closed my laptop and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, 3 neighbors stood near my mailbox, clearly talking about me. When they noticed me watching, they scattered awkwardly, like children caught doing something wrong. My phone buzzed again with messages from unfamiliar numbers. "Channel 6 would like to interview you regarding the lottery dispute. Please call us." Columbus Dispatch requesting comment on family lottery controversy. Legal representation available for lottery ticket disputes. Free consultation. I turned the phone off and sat down at my kitchen table. The official lottery paperwork lay spread out before me, suddenly looking less like proof of fortune and more like evidence of a crime. Outside, neighbors whispered and speculated. Judgment traveled faster than facts, delivered through social media posts and cautious distance. The irony was impossible to ignore. I was worth $120 million, and I had never felt more alone. Morning light streamed through the kitchen window as I spread printed copies of Ashley's posts across the table, laying them out like exhibits in a trial. Every comment, every share, every show of support felt like another nail driven into the coffin of my reputation. The coffee in my mug went cold as I continued reading what felt like a methodical execution of my character. Every post, every comment added another layer to the story Ashley and Richard were carefully building about me. The sudden ring of my landline cut through the silence. That old mechanical bell startled me more than it should have. The caller ID displayed a number I did not recognize, but something about it suggested a corporate office rather than a personal phone. "Mr. Woods?" a man asked when I answered. His voice was calm, polished, and authoritative in a way that only comes from decades of commanding boardrooms. "This is William Johnson, Richard's father." I tightened my grip on the receiver. "I am not sure what there is for us to discuss, Mr. Johnson." "There is quite a bit, actually," he replied. After a brief pause, he added, "Could we meet this morning? Murphy's Diner on 5th Street, 1 hour from now." Murphy's Diner was a modest, family-run place I visited occasionally for their breakfast specials. It was the last restaurant I would ever expect Richard to step into voluntarily. "May I ask what this is regarding?" I said carefully. "The lottery ticket," William answered, his tone steady. "And what I personally witnessed on Father's Day." My heart began pounding. "You were there?" "I was," he confirmed. "1 hour, Mr. Woods." The call ended, leaving me staring at the receiver. Richard's father wanting to meet could only mean trouble. Maybe they were coordinating legal pressure. Maybe this was an attempt to intimidate me into a settlement. Every instinct told me to stay home, but curiosity won. Murphy's Diner sat on a corner that had hosted small restaurants for half a century. Red vinyl booths lined the walls. The floor was checkered linoleum. The coffee was strong enough to wake the dead. I spotted William immediately. His tailored navy suit stood out sharply against the casual crowd, like a peacock among sparrows. He rose when he saw me and extended a well-manicured hand. "Mr. Woods, thank you for coming." We slid into a booth by the window, sunlight highlighting the deep lines etched into his face. Dolores, a familiar waitress who had been refilling my coffee cups since I was in my 40s, poured 2 mugs without asking. "I witnessed the entire gift exchange on Father's Day," William said without easing into it. "Every word, every gesture. Your daughter presented you with that lottery ticket and explicitly called it your Father's Day gift." I studied him closely, searching for any hint of manipulation. "She is claiming there was an agreement to split the winnings," I said. William's expression hardened. "That is not what happened." I watched her toss that ticket across the table with a dismissive laugh. There was no discussion, no negotiation, no verbal agreement of any kind. It was a gift, plain and simple. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through social media with the practiced efficiency of someone who had adapted to the digital age without hesitation. "What my son and daughter-in-law are doing is unconscionable," he continued. "They are destroying your reputation with lies." "You are Richard's father," I said carefully. "Why would you put yourself against your own son?" William let out a short, bitter laugh. "Because I raised him to have integrity, and he has forgotten everything I taught him. This situation has revealed a side of Richard that deeply disappoints me." He turned his phone toward me. On the screen was a draft Facebook post, already several paragraphs long. "I am going to correct the record," he said. "My name carries weight in this community, Mr. Woods. People know I do not misrepresent business matters, and this is exactly that, a question of ownership and ethics." I read as he refined the wording. "As a direct witness to the Father's Day gathering at Daniel Wood's home, I feel compelled to address the ongoing social media controversy. I personally observed Ashley Johnson purchase and present a lottery ticket to her father as a Father's Day gift. There was no agreement, verbal or otherwise, regarding the sharing of any potential winnings. No conditions were attached. Mr. Woods is the rightful owner of that ticket and any prize it produced. The current campaign against him is based on false claims, and I will not remain silent while a good man's reputation is damaged by members of my own family." "You do not have to do this," I said quietly. "Yes, I do," William replied. His finger hovered over the post button. "My son has lost sight of what it means to act with honor. Perhaps public accountability will remind him." He pressed post. Almost immediately, his phone began vibrating with notifications. Comments started appearing from people across Columbus's business community, executives, attorneys, investors, people who knew William Johnson's reputation for honesty and fairness. I watched the shift happen in real time. "This changes everything," I murmured. William slipped his phone back into his pocket and met my eyes. "I built my career on integrity," he said. "I will not stand by while my son destroys that legacy through deception." We sat in quiet understanding as the diner buzzed around us, ordinary people laughing, eating, and living their Saturday mornings, unaware that, for me, everything had already changed. Around us, life inside the diner carried on as if nothing extraordinary were happening. Families ordered pancakes. Elderly couples shared sections of the newspaper. Teenagers stared at their phones while parents tried unsuccessfully to pull them into conversation. Ordinary moments unfolding while my own world quietly shifted beneath my feet. "The truth has a strange way of finding daylight," William said at last. "Sometimes it just needs the right person willing to say it out loud." Outside the diner, we shook hands. His grip was firm, steady, reassuring. He nodded once, then walked toward his black Mercedes, leaving me standing beside my modest sedan. For the first time in weeks, I felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Hope. 2 weeks later, the phone call I had been waiting for finally came. "Mr. Woods," a familiar voice said, "this is Janet Chen from the Ohio Lottery Commission. Your verification process has been completed, and we would like to invite you to our formal check presentation tomorrow morning." "A presentation?" I asked, still struggling to absorb the scale of what was happening. "Yes," she replied. "Winners can choose between a private meeting or a public ceremony. Given the recent attention surrounding your case, we thought you might prefer the transparency of a public event." I thought about Ashley's social media campaign, the whispered conversations in grocery store aisles, the neighbors who no longer met my eyes. "Yes," I said, "I want the public ceremony." "Excellent. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning at our Columbus headquarters. There will be media present, so please dress accordingly. And Mr. Woods, congratulations. This will change your life." That evening, I laid out the best clothes I owned. A navy suit I had last worn to my wife's funeral 8 years earlier. A crisp white shirt that still carried the faint stiffness of professional pressing. And a tie Ashley had given me for Christmas 5 years ago, back when things were different. The lottery headquarters buzzed with activity the next morning. Television crews adjusted lighting rigs. Photographers tested angles. Officials hurried back and forth with clipboards and folders. I felt like an extra who had wandered onto the wrong movie set. "Mr. Woods," Janet approached with a composed smile. "Ready to become a millionaire?" The ceremony itself was far more formal than I expected. A backdrop emblazoned with the Ohio Lottery logo. An oversized check that required 2 people to hold. Camera flashes popping so rapidly it felt like standing under a strobe light. When Janet announced me as the winner of the $120 million Powerball jackpot, the applause washed over me in a way that felt unreal. "This is certainly unexpected," I said into the microphone, my voice steadier than I felt. "I plan to use this blessing responsibly, to help others, to pursue dreams I set aside long ago, and to live with dignity." Reporters fired questions immediately. How did it feel to win? What were my plans? Would I retire? I answered honestly, keeping my focus on gratitude and responsibility rather than the family conflict that had led me here. Then I saw them. Ashley and Richard forced their way through the crowd. Her face was flushed with desperation and resolve. She wore a designer dress reserved for important moments, the kind that likely cost more than my monthly pension. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the polished atmosphere. "That ticket is mine. We had an agreement." Security moved quickly, but her voice carried anyway. "Everyone needs to hear this," she yelled. "He is stealing from his own daughter." Cameras instantly swiveled toward the chaos. This was exactly the kind of spectacle television thrived on. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the ceremony area," a security guard said firmly. I looked straight at my daughter, calmer than I had been in months. "Ashley, please," I said quietly. "Do not do this here." She was beyond reason, waving her arms as Richard tried unsuccessfully to pull her back. "I bought that ticket," she shouted. "I said half was mine. Everyone at that dinner heard me." A reporter shoved a microphone toward me. "Mr. Woods, can you comment on this family dispute?" "The ticket was a Father's Day gift from my daughter," I said clearly, my voice steady despite the turmoil behind me. "Mr. William Johnson, who was present at the dinner, has already confirmed the circumstances. That is the full truth." "And what do you plan to do with the money?" another reporter asked. I glanced at Ashley, still shouting in the background. I thought about months of manipulation, years of misplaced loyalty, decades spent excusing behavior out of love. "I intend to help people who deserve it," I said. I plan to build a business I have dreamed about for years and to live with integrity, the kind that makes a person worthy of good fortune." The ceremony ended with handshakes and paperwork. In the parking lot, Ashley and Richard stood beside their luxury car, arguing heatedly with each other as the cameras slowly turned away. I watched Richard's movements grow sharper, his hands cutting through the air as his voice rose to match hers. Whatever unity they had once projected was unraveling in plain sight. I walked to my car holding the ceremonial check and the official paperwork that now labeled me one of the wealthiest men in the state of Ohio. As I drove away, I glanced into the rear-view mirror. They were still standing beside their luxury car, arguing intensely, their relationship buckling under the weight of their own ambition and greed. For the first time in months, I smiled. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with the newspaper spread open in front of me. There it was in black and white. My name, my face, the headline announcing the lottery win. I was still reading when I heard a car door slam outside. I looked up and saw Ashley walking slowly up my driveway. She was nothing like the furious woman from the day before. Her posture was slumped. Her steps were hesitant. Instead of bursting in, she stopped at my door and knocked softly. 3 quiet taps that sounded almost apologetic. I opened the door. Her eyes were swollen and red, her makeup smudged, her designer clothes wrinkled as if she had slept in them. "Dad," she said quietly, avoiding my gaze. Could we talk, please?" Despite everything, something old and instinctive stirred in me. "Come in," I said. She followed me into the living room and perched on the edge of the couch, tense and ready to flee. Her hands twisted together in her lap as she glanced around the modest space that had once been her childhood home. "I am so sorry about yesterday," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was overwhelmed. I was scared. I was not thinking clearly." Then the tears came, flowing freely and precisely. "Richard has been putting so much pressure on me about money," she continued. "Things are worse than I admitted to anyone. I did not know who else to turn to." I sat back in my recliner, keeping a careful distance. "What kind of trouble are you in, Ashley?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "We are about to lose the house. The mortgage, the credit cards, Richard's business. It is all collapsing. We owe almost $400,000, and the bank has started foreclosure proceedings." She painted a detailed picture of sleepless nights and panic attacks, of juggling bills, dodging calls, and desperately maintaining appearances while everything fell apart. Richard's investment firm, she claimed, was hemorrhaging clients. The country club membership was too expensive to cancel without public embarrassment. Jake's private school tuition was draining what little they had left. "I was too ashamed to ask you before," she said, pressing a tissue to her eyes. "You know how proud Richard is. He would be furious if he knew I was here, begging my father for help." I listened carefully, and then I understood. This was a performance, the same one she used as a teenager when she wanted something badly enough. The tears, the helplessness, the appeal to my instinct to protect her. "You have always been there for me," she said, reaching across the space between us and touching my hand. "I just need help one more time, just enough to save the house and get back on our feet." "How much?" I asked. She answered instantly. $2 million. She said it as if she had practiced the number. "It sounds like a lot," she added quickly, "but it is nothing compared to what you won. You would still have more than $100 million left." The casual nature of the request stunned me. $2 million, an amount that would have represented 4 decades of my working life, spoken as lightly as borrowing cash for gas. "Ashley," I said gently, "I have heard these promises before." She frowned, confusion flashing across her face. "What do you mean?" "You took $13,000 from my account without asking. You publicly smeared me online. You tried to take the lottery ticket by force." My voice remained calm and measured. "Now you want me to reward that behavior with $2 million? This is different," she insisted, tears coming faster now. I admit I was wrong before, but we are talking about losing everything. Our home, our life. Jake's education. You need to learn to solve your own problems, I said quietly. The words hung between us. Her expression changed. The softness drained away, replaced by something sharper. You are really going to do this? She asked. You are going to let your own daughter lose her house while you sit on $100 million? I love you, I said, meeting her eyes. But I will not enable your choices anymore. She stood abruptly and began pacing, stopping at the window and turning back toward me. Fine, she snapped. But do not expect to be part of Jake's life after this. No holidays, no family dinners, no calls when he graduates. Do not expect anything. The threats came quickly, each one aimed at my deepest fears. Loneliness, exclusion, erasure from the family I had built. A lonely old man, forgotten, punished for refusing to pay. I remained seated, steady. If that is your choice, I said calmly. I will have to accept that, I said quietly. The finality in my voice stopped her cold. Ashley stared at me for several long seconds, as if searching for another lever to pull, another weakness to exploit. For the first time, there was nothing left in her arsenal. You have changed, she said at last, her voice sharp with accusation. Money has made you cruel. I shook my head slowly. No, Ashley, money did not make me cruel. It made me free. She spun on her heel and stormed out without another word. Her footsteps echoed across the front walkway, hard and fast, until the front door slammed shut. I stood by the window and watched her drive away, anger written plainly in her posture as her tires squealed leaving my driveway. When she was gone, I turned back into the house. The silence felt heavy, but not empty. There was sadness there, yes, but also relief. The little girl who used to fall asleep against my chest while I read her stories was gone. In her place stood someone I no longer recognized and could no longer save. I went into the kitchen and put water on for tea. My movements were steady, deliberate. For the first time in many years, my home felt peaceful. 3 months later, I stood in my empty living room while movers carried the final boxes out the door. I held my phone in my hand, opened Ashley's contact information, and selected block this number. Some bridges, once burned, were not meant to be rebuilt. The drive to Dayton took just over 2 hours, winding through open countryside and quiet towns. In this new place, I would simply be Daniel Woods, a new resident, not the man from the lottery headlines. The house sat on a calm street far from Columbus, distant enough that surprise visits would require real effort and intention. Henderson's classic auto restoration had been listed for sale for months. The moment I stepped inside the shop and breathed in the familiar mix of motor oil, metal, and polish, I knew I had found what I was looking for. You sure you want to take on this much work? Tom Henderson asked, waving a hand toward the half-finished projects filling the bays. Most men your age are slowing down. I ran my hand along the fender of a 1967 Mustang, the metal cool and solid beneath my palm. I am not slowing down, I said. I am finally starting. Within a week, Henderson's became Woods Classic Auto Restoration. I hired 3 local mechanics and launched the supporting Single Fathers Foundation, remembering my own struggle raising a child alone after my wife died. Evenings in Dayton were quiet in the best way. I could walk the streets without whispered conversations trailing behind me. At the local diner, coffee was poured without judgment or curiosity. Settling in all right? My neighbor Helen asked one afternoon, handing me a tin of homemade cookies. It is a quiet neighborhood, but we look out for each other. Quiet is exactly what I wanted, I told her. The shop became my refuge. Working alongside younger mechanics, I rediscovered the satisfaction of solving problems with my hands instead of my checkbook. We restored a 1955 Chevrolet to showroom perfection. When the owner saw it, he cried, and I understood why. I thought about Ashley from time to time, but without the sharp pain I once carried. The money had not changed who I was. It had simply stripped away years of enabling and denial. Occasionally, my phone rang with unfamiliar numbers. I suspected some of them were her. I let them go unanswered. One Thursday evening, I locked up the shop after finishing a 1969 Camaro restoration. On the drive home, I passed the community center where a small plaque read, "Supporting strong families through tough times." I parked for a moment and looked up at the stars beginning to appear. Somewhere, Ashley was living with the consequences of her choices. What I could control was this: building something honest and meaningful. Every restored car, every foundation grant, was a quiet vote for a world where character mattered more than entitlement. The lottery ticket now hung framed in my office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Sometimes the most valuable gifts arrive disguised as garbage, and the most necessary lessons come wrapped in pain.